It's an honor for me to have the opportunity to interview General Robert Spalding. Robert Spalding, I would say, a friend of mine too. He's not only a former Air Force general, he was also a former national security advisor for the American government. And now, I think, if I'm not wrong, working as CEO of a telecommunication company called Q Network. And last and not least, Robert Spalding is also the author of a book called Stealth War, How China Take Over While America's Elite Slept. It's a very exciting book. I read it, and thank you for writing all these great things for us. Now, so my question to you is, that is inspired by your book title, So my question is, now after your book has been published now for more than 1 year, have you seen the Americans' elite are waking up, or are they still sleeping?
Thank you, Mannion. It's great to be here. I definitely do see that the elite's waking up. I was very concerned about the potential for the Biden administration to significantly change the policies that had been implemented by the Trump administration to push back on the Chinese Communist Party, and it looks like they're going to continue their hardline policy with regard to that. They have, for example, invited the Taiwan ambassador to the inauguration. They have confirmed Secretary Pompeo's claim that what's going on in Xinjiang is genocide. Secretary Blinken has reaffirmed that. President Biden has reaffirmed that. And I think President Biden also just signed a Buy American order. So I think by all accounts, they are continuing the policies. And I'm actually quite hopeful that in addition to that, we're going to see further investment in the United States and in other democracies to move manufacturing out of China, through our own, affirmative efforts.
Okay, that's interesting to hear from you, Rob. I mean, although Biden administration seems to be quite different from the Trump administration, but when it comes to the China policy, as I understand what you say, it won't be that much change, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Now, talking about China policy and also the previous administration, I can recall that former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, he talked a lot about the clean network within the NATO member states. Yeah, I understand that. For me, my understanding, I'm not an expert, but you can tell me. And my understanding is this clean network basically means a network without equipment from such company as Huawei and other Chinese companies. First of all, is my understanding correct? And if it is correct, how do you see the continuous development in this respect?
So you are correct. I think what's happening is a recognition on the part of democracies that allowing authoritarian regimes to be involved in your critical infrastructure, electrical power, telecommunications, computing is an extreme danger to democracy. The collection of data allows them to monitor individuals, whether they be Chinese nationals that are dissidents abroad, or even the citizens of democracies, and then to use that data to influence their behaviors, whether through putting pressure on the companies that they work for, the universities they attend, even through other political means. So I think it's a recognition that in order for us to preserve democracy going forward, the spirit of global data protection regulations, GDPR, actually has to be implemented in technology. In other words, the companies and the equipment that we use to power our telecommunications and computing infrastructure must be from democratic countries.
I see. Yeah. So how do you see the continuous development of 5G? I mean, I understand that you are very much involved in this discussion of 5G. And the Chinese company Huawei is claiming that they are getting the biggest market share in the world, and more than 80 countries have signed contract with them, and so on. On the other hand, the Trump administration started a kind of sanction against Huawei, so they have difficulty to get some chips delivered. So how do you look at it? Will Huawei be able to really, so to say, conquer the world of 5G, or will the American sanction continue to have its effect?
I think Huawei and ZTE, two Chinese companies, and other companies from authoritarian regimes will find purchase in countries that are involved with the Belt and Road Initiative. I think increasingly we're seeing that democracies are rejecting these companies. I think most importantly, with regard to 5G, it is an opportunity for us to reset the global telecommunications and computing infrastructure rules and technology with regard to data security and privacy. It's really about not only the physical security of the infrastructure, but also the encryption standards by which we move and store data and work with data around the world. I think governments have been afraid of encryption. Mostly because it's something that's a tool that's used by criminals. But authoritarian regimes have used this as a way to suppress their own populations and oppress people around the world. So I think democracies, governments that are responsive to their citizens, that are responsive to people, should trust people to have data security and privacy. And what I'm focused on, and the people I work with, is ensuring the infrastructure that carries and works with, manipulates, stores data is secure and private for citizens of democracies.
I see. So practically, if a German government or any European government and also other network operator, if they are still, so to say, considering how to move forward in the 5G strategy, what would be your recommendation? I mean, would that be just good enough to skip Huawei and CTE and go for example, Ericsson or Nokia? Will that solve the problem? And if not, what is the right way to go forward?
It's a good first step, but it's not going to solve the problem. The telecommunications industry standards have been based on a consumer-grade product. What we believe is that it needs to be based on a military-grade product that actually the military can use. It's resilient, it's robust, it's secure, it protects data, it continues to operate in the event of natural disaster or adversary attack or hacking. It protects the systems, it ensures the continuation of our critical infrastructure. And I think in order to do that, you can rely on some of the standards that have been developed within the 3GPP standards body. But that must be built within a framework of robust security. And that is not what's going on today. And so it is not sufficient just to not build your infrastructure from an authoritarian regime. You must look at the entire ecosystem from end to end, and stress security, reliability, robustness to ensure that not only does your society continue to have the connectivity it needs, computing it needs in order to run daily life, but also that the citizens' data is private and secure. This is what we're focused on. These standards are well known, and in fact, governments frequently apply these kinds of standards to their own networks We just don't apply them to commercial networks. So it's really critical that we think differently about how we build infrastructure.
So are you saying that even for a country like Germany, the authority, they know how the military solution is in 5G, and they actually just need to apply the similar security measures for the commercial network. Am I correct?
That's correct. In fact, what is the purpose in the 21st century of having a military if a foreign adversary can come in and begin to influence your population through use of their data and manipulation through social media networks and propaganda, which is exactly the way that countries like China, like Russia, like to operate. And so we have to think differently about national security in the 21st century, protecting the independence, the sovereignty, the freedom, the human rights, the civil liberties of people, of democracies. In order to do that, we must actually be in the telecommunications and computing infrastructure and ensuring the same types of security that the citizens receive are what we're using for the military. It is important that preserving that the principles, the rules, the values of your democratic society. It's not sufficient just to have physical security today. It's more important that you have data security in the 21st century, because data really is the fuel for artificial intelligence. In fact, the Chinese Communist Party seeks to become the Saudi Arabia of data for the 21st century, because they know they can use citizens' data against them using artificial intelligence and machine learning. These are the challenges we face, and this is why we have to stress the importance of technology in telecommunications and computing.
I see. Now, I understand that in your business, you also have a lot of experience with Europe, with European companies and people, and maybe also European politicians. Yeah. So, do you see there is a kind of change in opinion in Europe, so they are going to accept such concept as you have been describing, keeping out manufacturer who may impose national security risk and going for a true secure network. How do you feel it? I mean, I understand that you know pretty well about Europe too.
I think certainly there are some countries that recognize the importance of data security and privacy for preserving their democracy and preserving their independence and sovereignty. Some countries more than others are starting to gravitate this way, not just in Europe, but in Africa and Latin America as well. And I think going forward, more and more of these countries are going to focus on data security and privacy, particularly as they build their new secure 5G infrastructure. Authoritarian regimes were the first to recognize the power of data in manipulating their citizens. Now democracies are beginning to catch on. It's not complete across the board, but certainly some very focused countries that want data security and privacy for their citizens are going to be some of the first to get on board with this idea.
So you do foresee a kind of acceptance in Europe for going for a more secure network, right?
In fact, I'm really happy to say yes. Unfortunately, for my own country, it's not as advanced in terms of the thinking in the United States. Certainly, European countries have been, especially with the introduction of GDPR, have been much more focused on data security and privacy, particularly against the American tech companies, which I agree are far too intrusive. And I think what we see going forward is these countries increasingly thinking about building nationwide systems that do protect the data security and privacy of their citizens. That
sounds great. But when I think about what happened at the end of last year, I think the last day of 2020, European Union under the leadership of Angela Merkel, signed an investment agreement with China. And they receive a lot of critique, also from the European Parliament. They criticize it quite strongly, and they still need a kind of approval from the Parliament. So some people were looking at this as a kind of a step backwards, because the negotiation has been going on for 7 years, and many things make the European Union could not agree to sign any contract, and now it's signed. How do you look at it?
That was extremely unfortunate. I think one of the differences in how the Chinese Communist Party seeks to undermine the free world is to use the Trojan horse of business and finance and trade. They're not like the Soviet Union that used military supremacy and military dominance and oppression using military forces. They really use money and greed to encourage your acceptance of their dominion within your institutions, particularly corporate institutions, financial institutions. And because corporate and finance are very involved in politics in free societies, your political institutions, and this is what we saw with regard to the EU's decision. And so we have to think differently again about the ability for totalitarian societies to influence our democracies away from our principles and values using money, using greed, using corporate processes. And in fact, Germany led the effort because Germany has so much to lose in terms of manufacturing within China. So the industry was putting pressure on the government to move this forward in the EU. I do not think, however, in the long run, it will benefit the German citizens or any other citizens of a free society. And so we have to, again, think differently about how you preserve your independence and sovereignty and freedom, and in particular, corporate, finance, data, politics, all of that can be influenced today by the Chinese Communist Party, and that's exactly what you saw with regard to the EU decision.
I understand. So maybe the right things, European Union and also Germany, of course, should think about is how to make Germany and EU step by step less dependent economically on China, right?
That's correct. And in fact, they need to understand every instance where the Chinese Communist Party has the ability to influence the institution, whether they be academic, political, legal, or corporate or financial, and really work hard to ensure that those areas are not influenced or interfered with by the Chinese Communist Party.
Thank you, Rob. I think the time is over now. Thank you. It was an honor for the German Epoch Times to have this opportunity to interview you. Yeah. Thank you very much, General Spalding.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hope that we have a chance to do the same thing again in the future.
That's great.
Thank you.